So we're going to move on with the evening if we can. I just want to do another sound check. Can everyone still hear me? All the way at the back, wonderful. And Amir Tibon is with us now. Amir, can you hear me and can we hear you more importantly?
So I can definitely hear you. And
we hear
I
you
hope
clearly.
everyone in the audience can hear me. And I want to thank everyone who came and especially send a big hug to my dear family, the Mir family who is in the audience. I love you guys.
Where are they? Hi. Hi to the family. Right. So Amir, thank you so much. It's of course the middle of the night over there in Israel. You're not at home because you are in Mishmar HaEmek Kibbutz in northern Israel, having been essentially evacuated there because there's a terrible rampage that took place on October the 7th. We've divided this Israel segment of the evening, I mean, into three parts. One is that of salvation, but not unbridled happiness, of course, yours being the story of salvation. Then we're going to learn from Doron about the family members of his family that were murdered. And then we're going to hear from somebody whose brother is being held hostage inside the Gaza Strip still today. I really just want people to hear from you. Tell us about your story. Why were you living in Nahal Oz? And what happened on October 7th that changed the life of your family?
So first of all, I want to send a big hug to all of the members of my extended family today, the family of people from the area that we call Otef Aza, the Gaza envelope. And those who have right now family members in the hands of the enemy. And we're fighting for you. I want you to know it. Nahal Oz is a beautiful community located very, very close to Gaza. I mean, essentially, it's the closest place in Israel to Gaza. It's not a settlement or a disputed part of the country. It was founded in 1953 by a group of young, idealistic Israelis, 18 and 19-year-olds, in the midst of their military service, who were sent at the time by the government of David Ben-Gurion with a mission to create a new community directly on the border with Gaza. Ben-Gurion had a belief that the borders of Israel will only be secure if, alongside military bases, there will also be civilian lives and communities on those borders. He believed that in order to protect the border, the tank and the gun will not be enough. You also need the school and the clinic and the farmers. And that's how Nahal Oz was founded. I moved there personally in the year 2014, almost a decade ago. Back then, in the summer of 2014, there was a war between Israel and Hamas that lasted for 50 days. And Nahal Oz, during that war, was officially the most bombarded place in the state of Israel. It is so close to Gaza that it is not protected by Iron Dome because the interceptor does not have enough time to calculate the route of the mortar and the rocket before it lands in Nahal Oz. When there is a siren in Nahal Oz, you have 7 seconds to seek shelter. So you have to be able to run. And I was covering that war as a reporter. I was living in Tel Aviv at the time with Miri, my wife. And I wanted to go and see this place, the most bombarded place in the entire country. And I don't know what I was expecting, maybe some really rough and gray and cruel place. And I found myself visiting a beautiful, serene paradise that, yes, is located directly on the border with Gaza, but really is breathtaking. And it's hard for me to describe it in words, but I know Benjamin has visited me there in the past, and I don't see his face right now, but I'm sure, you know, the memories come to his mind as well. Nahal Oz is a resilient small community, just under 500 people, who have been holding this place, marking the border with their feet, raising their children there for decades now. During that war in 2014, there was a tragedy in the community. A 4-year-old child was killed by a mortar launched by Hamas toward the very end of the war. His name was Daniel Tregerman. At the time, his picture became very famous all over the world. Beautiful young child. And as a result of that, a lot of young couples, young families decided to leave the community. And the Nahal Oz, like other communities on the border with Gaza back then, the end of 2014, the communities were eager for young couples, young families to move in. Miri and I, we were a young couple living in Tel Aviv, no children at the time. And like a lot of young couples in the city, we used to have these conversations that one day in the future, when we have a family, maybe we'll move to a smaller place, place with more sense of community, a kibbutz or a moshav, if you know a little bit the type of communities we have in Israel. And it was something we used to talk about, but I don't know if we were serious about it. But then the war ended, and I knew that this beautiful community that I had visited several times as a reporter was eagerly looking for young people to move. Miri is a brave and adventurous and very, very Zionist woman. And a month after the war was over, she came with me to Nahal Oz to look for apartments in the kibbutz. At a time when people were driving out, leaving, we were driving in. We said we want to come and live here. We didn't know if it would be a long-term commitment. I mean, we were young, we were idealistic. There was also a political component to it. Nahal Oz and most of these communities on the border with Gaza are more affiliated with the left-wing liberal side of Israeli politics. And as a young secular, liberal, left-leaning couple, we felt it was a commitment to strengthen this community at the time. And so we just came there. We just did it. We were, I think, maybe the first or the second couple to move in after the war. And over the next few years, we watched the community experience amazing growth. I mean, one by one, families arrived looking for the same things that we were looking for and staying for the same reasons that we stayed, which was the very strong sense of community and togetherness. I believe one of the biggest problems in the world today is loneliness. I think people feel alone in many places, especially in more modern Western society. There's a strong sense of loneliness. When you live in Nahal Oz, you're never alone. You're part of a community that always hugs you and always looks out for you. This was very evident during the COVID epidemic. I think people in big cities back then felt very, very lonely, whereas in the kibbutz, we were able to support one another and retain the strong sense of community life that is so important to us. We got married in Nahal Oz in 2016. A ceremony in the pool of the kibbutz, which is really so ridiculously close to the border with Gaza. It's unbelievable. We did our wedding there back then. And Benjamin was there. We had 400 guests, which is considered a small wedding in Israel. And the more significant decision than moving there at the time was a decision we took at the end of 2020 to come back there, because in between, there was a 3-year window when I was the Washington, D.C. correspondent for Haaretz, the newspaper that I write for. Donald Trump got elected at the time as your president. It was a big story. I don't know if you remember it. And the newspaper asked me to go to Washington, D.C. to cover the madness that was going on there. And so, we lived for 3 years in the U.S. Our first daughter, Galia, was born in the U.S. And then we came back to Israel, and we made, I think, the most important decision of our lives up to that point, which was the decision to go back to Nahal Oz, to go back to this community that we loved so much, and to raise our children over there, less than a mile from Gaza. Carmel, our second daughter, was born already in the kibbutz, and I can tell you, my 2 daughters, until the morning of October 7, had the most beautiful and happy childhood anyone can imagine in this kibbutz on the border. Yes, from time to time, there were sirens and rockets and mortars, and we had to run with them to the bomb shelter or to the safe room. In every home in our communities, there is a room built of concrete, strong material that is able to withstand a direct hit by a rocket. And most families, including us, that's where you put the kids to sleep at night. So if there is a rocket alarm at 6 in the morning, the parents run to the children and not the other way around. The children can just stay in bed. But they really had a very, very happy childhood there. They loved the kindergarten in the kibbutz, where every day they would, the educational staff would take the kids for walks in the small shaded alleys of the kibbutz, and they would go and see the cows and the donkeys. And, when they learned about the fruits that we eat on different holidays, they didn't see pictures of those fruits or, you know, like a bag from the supermarket. They went to pick those fruits with their hands and feel them with their hands. We were living in a very, very special place. And yes, it came with challenges. We took those challenges upon us. We knew there was always a risk of war breaking out. We knew there was always a risk of, you know, mortar fire, rocket fire. From time to time, we had to just, you know, shove the girls in the car and drive away for a few days if a real war broke out. And we would stay with relatives because it's not a place for children to be when there is a war. And yet none of that was ever enough to discourage us from living there and raising our children there and believing in Nahal Oz. When we went to bed on the night of October 6th, it was a Friday, our level of confidence in the state of Israel and the Israeli military was 100%. You cannot live in Nahal Oz if you don't trust the state and the military 100% to protect you, because you know, and we were never naive about this, you know that on the other side of that border fence, there are thousands of people who wake up every morning wanting to kill you and your children. We never had any doubt about that, okay? We were not naive about who is Hamas and the Islamic Jihad and the other terror groups in Gaza. Sadly, I will say we were naive in our complete trust of the government and the military to protect us. And that collapsed over our heads on the morning of October 7, when we woke up to a very heavy barrage of mortars and rockets. It was 6 a.m. And the first thing we heard really on that day was a whistle. When a mortar is about to fall and explode, it goes something like this. And then there is this boom, and Amir woke me up. She said, Amir, we have to run to the safe room, to the girls. So we ran, and we were not so excited about it. We've been through this over the years. It's something that when you live on the Gaza border, you kind of get used to it, and it happens from time to time. There's even a little bit of, you know, humor involved. On that Saturday night, there was supposed to be a celebration in Nahal Oz, 70 years to the foundation of the Kibbutz in October 1953. From October 53 to October 23. And that Saturday evening, there was supposed to be a celebration in the pool, and Galia, our oldest daughter, was supposed to dance on the stage. And so when we were waiting in the safe room, the first thing we tell each other is, she did really good in the rehearsal, but she's not going to be on the stage tonight, because we realized something was starting to happen. But it didn't take long for us to understand this was a different kind of event. This wasn't one of those mornings in which we just wait for, you know, a break in the mortar fire when they have to reload, and we just put the girls in the car and we drive away. This was a different kind of event. We started hearing automatic gunfire. First, it was a bit distant in the fields of the kibbutz, and then it got closer and closer until we basically heard gunshots right outside our window. Not down the street, not nearby. Literally a person standing with a gun outside our window and shooting into our house, into our living room. Trying to break our door, we heard shouting in Arabic. I understand Arabic, so I understood what was being said. It was tactical maneuvers, tactical orders by a commander to his soldiers. And we realized that Hamas had broken into the community, and that now our lives were really, really in danger. Our girls were waking up at that point, 3.5-year-old Galia, 1.5-year-old Carmel, and, you know, they're waking up in a dark room. The electricity had fallen down, and they're asking, you know, can we go out to play? I mean, it's a Saturday morning, you know, they just woke up, they know there's no kindergarten, they want to go out and play. And we have to tell them, no, you can't go out to play now. It's dangerous outside. So they ask, can we have breakfast? And we have to tell them, no, we don't have food here and we can't go out. It's dangerous outside. We did have water. Miri had the wisdom to bring water into the safe room before we just locked ourselves from the world. And the most difficult thing was telling them that they have to be quiet. They cannot make any noise because our doors of the house were locked. The windows were shut. The shades were rolled down. And we were hoping that maybe, if there is no sound at all, the cell of 5 Hamas terrorists armed from head to toe that were standing outside our window at that point would think there's nobody in the house. So we just told the girls, you have to be absolutely quiet, not a word. I don't know until today how to explain it, but they just understood and they cooperated. They were silent for the next 10 hours while we were waiting in the dark, hearing gunshots all around us, into our house, on our windows, on our doors, all over the neighborhood. And we're looking at, the WhatsApp group, the text messaging group of our neighborhood, and we see what's happening. Everybody's writing the same thing. The terrorists are here. They're outside my door. They're outside my house. They are inside my house. They're trying to break into my safe room. At first, we thought it was a local event. We thought there was a Hamas cell that had broken into Nahal Oz, and in a few minutes, the military will come and take care of it. Even then, we believed in the state and the military to come and rescue us. It took us a long time to understand what was happening. This was not a local incident. This was happening all over the Gaza border area, in dozens of kibbutzim and towns and military bases. The military had been surprised and overrun by the terrorists, and we were alone. I can say that those were the 11 most difficult hours of my life. And at various times, we thought we were just going to die in there. And we were saying our goodbyes in English in order not to upset the girls and not to get them, excited. But speaking to each other in English, we really said goodbye. We said goodbye to our families. And yet, as difficult as this experience probably sounds to you, I want you to know we are the fortunate, lucky ones. We got out of there alive. Inside our kibbutz, there was a small team of police, not even officers, just young policemen who were monitoring in the week before October 7 the demonstrations that Hamas was holding on the border fence every night. And this small group, 10 police guys, together with 3 very, very brave men from our local security team of the kibbutz, they fought for hours like lions against 100 Hamas terrorists who just swarmed our community. 13 against 100. We talk about 1948, the myth of the foundation of Israel, the few versus the many, me'atim mul rabim. On that day in Nahal Oz, it was not a myth. It was just the reality. 13 against 100. They did everything they could, but they could only do so much. I mean, in our neighborhood, there was a battle right outside our window. One of the terrorists, I later saw the bodies, had an RPG loaded, aimed at my neighbor's house. In other parts of the kibbutz, the results were different. People were murdered. People were kidnapped. We have right now in Gaza, from my community, an 8-year-old girl and her 14-year-old sister in the hands of Hamas. Many people in Israel on that morning just woke up, realized what was happening, and without waiting for orders, without waiting for someone to tell them what to do, took whatever weapons they had in their hands and rushed down south to help. One of those people was my father and my mother with him. Both of them over 60, grandfather and grandmother, drove in their vehicle from Tel Aviv, which is an hour and 15 minutes, to try to get to our community and to try to save us and other people. Along the way, as they were driving down and they were really alone on the road, they saved lives, and I'm extremely proud of them. This story, it's been told. I don't want to repeat everything. You can watch on 60 Minutes. It was told in other places. But the important thing I want to say, and this connects to what Brett said a few minutes ago, is that on that morning, we saw a complete failure of the Israeli government and the military. And right now we're at war. My brother is an officer on the front line. Many of my neighbors are there fighting. And so right now we're busy fighting and defeating Hamas, but I will never, ever forgive, never, ever forget anyone who was involved in this failure, starting from the highest level with the prime minister and going down to the relevant military commanders and intelligence people. They failed us on that morning. But the spirit of the many, many people of Israel who went out to fight that day, to me, is more important right now. And, my parents' story is part of it. The fact that they just drove down there, my dad with a pistol, they saved a young couple that ran away from the massacre at the music festival, literally just put them in their car and took them to safety. My father joined a battle on the road to our kibbutz, took a gun from an officer that was killed, shot to death a terrorist, maybe two, and then evacuated 3 injured soldiers. And my mother, under bombs, under fire from Hamas, evacuated those 3 wounded soldiers to the hospital. And my father turned around and eventually made it to our kibbutz with a buddy of his, Israel Ziv, a 67-year-old retired paratroopers general. These stories, there were so many of them on that day. Okay, our story became a little famous, but there were so many stories of heroism that day, of people who did not wait for instructions, did not wait for anyone to tell them where to go or what to do, and just decided to go there and try to save lives. And some of them did not come back. One of the things I've been doing since October 7th, since I won my life back in a way, because I was sure for many hours I was not going to make it alive. One of the things I've been doing is going to visit the families of soldiers who died in the battle for our life. And there was one story about a team of 5 officers and soldiers from Maglan. It's a special forces unit that all of them were at home on that morning. Each one of them lives in a different part of Israel. And they communicated, they decided to all join forces at a certain junction in southern Israel, and they just drove toward our kibbutz to try to save us. On the road to Nahal Oz, they were ambushed by a Hamas cell, because Hamas knew that reinforcements would have to come on this road, and they waited for them. There was a gunfire, there was an ambush. And of these 5 guys, 3 died and 2 were injured. This is the group of soldiers that when my father later arrived, he took the gun from one of them and then evacuated the 2 wounded guys to safety. And I told their families, the families of the guys who did not come back, how much I admire what they did that morning. They did not wait for anyone. They said, we're going there and we're trying to save lives right now. And they fought and they killed Hamas terrorists and they opened the road. They neutralized this ambush. They opened the road, and then more forces could come and save our lives. So this is what we're looking at. We're looking at a major failure and a major crisis in our confidence and trust, and at the same time, amazing stories of heroism and courage under fire. And then the last thing I want to say, there's a big question hovering above every conversation of this kind that I've been doing in recent weeks, and I've been doing a lot, interviews and briefings to Jewish communities, which is the question of whether or not we will go home. And to that, my answer is very clear. It's not a question of if, it's a question of how. We want to go home. After everything that happened, most of our community wants to go back to Nahal Oz. But in order to go there, we need to regain the trust and the confidence that have been broken. We had a contract with the state of Israel. Everybody who lives in the Gaza border area had a contract. The contract goes like this. We protect the border. We mark the border with our lives. Just by being there, we are the border of Israel. We protect the border. The state of Israel protects us. And we held our side of the bargain heroically for years under mortar fire and the threat of anti-tank missiles on our cars and many, many things that nobody needs to know. We held our side of the bargain. On October 7, the state of Israel did not commit to our agreement, did not honor our agreement. And in order to bring back the trust and to bring back the agreement, the first and most important thing is to deliver security and to bring back our people. To bring back our people who are now in the hands of Hamas. Without this, trust will be very, very hard to build. But yes, we want to go back home, and we want to have all of our people who are now in the hands of the enemy come back with us. And I believe we will. I believe we will. When people ask me, who will win this war? I have a sentence, and Brett, I'm sorry, I'm causing a little spoiler to your upcoming column. But there's one sentence for me that defines victory. A year from today, I put my 2 girls in kindergarten in Nahal Oz, and I drive off to work in Tel Aviv with peace of mind. If I can do that, Israel has won the war. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Amir, I just want to thank you, and I want everybody to understand that we have our next two guests, and we'll be adjourning at 7:30, and I want to thank you so very much for being with us. Nahal Oz needs help. Everybody here has a card on their chair. You can scan this, you can donate to it, you can invest directly through the MirYam Institute to Nahal Oz to rebuild that community so that Amir, his family, and other families like him can live their lives in peace and security, knowing the basic aspects of day-to-day life that all of us take so for granted. So please consider doing that. Please do it now. Do it during the course of this evening. And Amir, I want to thank you. Thank you so very much. And we appreciate you speaking to us in the middle of the night over there in Israel. And may you know no more sorrow or challenge. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you all.